Ambassador Ishad Rezale, thank you for talking to JoyNews. Our last interaction was last year, so it's fair to say Happy New Year and welcome to the program.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's just unfortunate that a year has passed and a lot has changed internationally. It's been a year since Ukraine was invaded by Russia. The European Union was amongst the number of multilateral platforms condemning Russia's aggression against Ukraine. A year on, the situation hasn't changed. In fact, it's now worsened. Has the EU changed its position on the dynamics of this war and your position on Vladimir Putin's decision to invade Ukraine?
No, you're correct. 1 year ago, Russia decided to invade and to engage in what we call an unprovoked and unjustified a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a sovereign country. And as you've mentioned, there has been a lot happening on different strands. At the diplomatic level, as you've mentioned, the international community, to a very large majority, has condemned this invasion. At the military level, I would like to disagree with you. 1 year after, the proof is Russia could not achieve its goal to invade and annex Ukraine. And at economic level, as you have seen, we have all faced some consequences of the war. But the European Union, being the European Union, we have undertaken to alleviate the consequences, especially when it comes to food security, of the blockade organized by Russia. I think it's very important to remember that Russia organized the blockade of exportation of grain and fertilizer from Ukraine. And this is one of the causes of the huge impact at international level of the cost of food, staple and fertilizer. And the European Union has organized what we call an EU lane, safe lane, in order to maintain the exportation of grains and fertilizer, besides the UN as well, who have engaged in the so-called Black Sea Initiative, Black Sea Grain Initiative. So while condemning the invasion, while supporting the Ukrainian state to face the aggression, the European Union has maintained its attention on other aspects of the conflict or the consequences of the conflict, which can impact the international community, especially Africa. And I have to say that when it comes to Africa, the European Union has, on top of that, mobilized 1.6 billion euros in terms of food security for the most affected region, Horn of Africa, Sahel region, Southern Africa, and Ghana benefited out of it as well.
We'll talk about Africa and the African context as to how the Russian-Ukraine war is affecting and impacting nations such as Ghana. But there are others who are on the fringes asking why Europe is continuing to pump up and ramp up military aid to Ukraine when you believe in the power of democracy and negotiations. Why is that not working?
It's not working because there is an invader who is not listening. But I think what is important is the EU constant stance, together with many African nations, like Ghana, for example, to say this is not okay. We need to abide to a rules-based international multilateral order. And this is the reason why the European Union and many other nations, once again, there was a huge hegemony of the nations condemning the invasion and the aggression from Russia to Ukraine, because this is not about Europe, this is not about a very far away war, this is about the world we want to live in. Is it a world of brutality where the stronger can invade the weaker, or is it a world where we should abide by the rule? And I think it was very important, and today still, to highlight that the majority of the states said, no, we want to defend this value. We want to defend the UN Charter to which everyone abode, and we want as well to ensure that potential differences are settled by law, settled according to justice, but not by might. And I think this is a very important message that Ghana shared to the world. Ghana is not voting with the EU or against anyone. Ghana has got, as stated by the president, its own foreign policies priorities, and these are very clear. This is principle-based, and this is because they don't believe that the might and force should rule over any other consideration. And in the end, this is what we share as well in terms of value.
Experts are predicting that the war is far from over. Are you worried as the European Union about this?
Worried? No, we are facing the situation. I'm not an expert, so I cannot predict the end game. But as you've mentioned, we are supporting Ukraine financially, militarily as well. And we have put a series of sanctions, which is not covering food security and fertilizer, because it's very important to debunk the idea that European sanctions have made it difficult to access staples and fertilizers, in order to make the pressure to stop the war. But as I said, it's not only upon the Ukrainians or upon the international community, but all the belligerents have to come to terms.
Well, the Munich Security Conference is just rounding off, and that dominated discussions, the war. And what's unique to us here in Africa, and especially Ghana, is about the intervention that was made by our president and his commentary on what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. He seems to suggest that the West has turned all of its focus onto Ukraine, leaving the other side, which is Africa, to suffer the disruptions in supply chains. And we're seeing the consequent effect on our economy here in Ghana as well.
No, I think it's a misperception, because, as I said, when the food crisis erupted across the globe, European Union has maintained its attention to other corners of the globe. Not everything is related to Ukraine, including when it comes to the EU. EU has maintained this dialogue with the countries of Middle East and Northern Africa, and is maintaining its attention and focus interest to support African nations to weather from this. So we have mobilized, as I said, 1.6 billion euros. It's not nothing. We have increased, because there are other situations, not in Ghana, other situations in Africa of humanitarian magnitude in terms of humanitarian crisis. We have increased dramatically our support for these situations, like in Horn of Africa or in Sahel, for example. And I think it's not the reflect of the reality. We are very much supportive of the effort of Ghana when it comes to regional peace and stability. The presidents know that. We are very supportive as well of finding solutions to alleviate the debt sustainability issues in Ghana and elsewhere. So I think there was an emphasis on Ukraine, there still is, but this is not done to the expense of other situations or other areas of interest. And most importantly, Africa is and remains a key partner to the EU. This is the reason why the engagement is constant. This is the reason why President Akufo-Addo has been invited to Munich Security. If Africa didn't matter, President Akufo-Addo would not have been invited. If Africa did not matter, President Charles Michel would not have visited Ghana in November. If Africa did not matter, Charles Michel would not have attended the Africa Union Summit a few days ago. So I think these are emphases of interest. Ukraine is dragging a lot of interest, energy, attention, but not to the expense of other partnerships.
Well, I was asking that question because Russia's influence is not just expanding to say the West or the East, but it's also coming closer to us here in Ghana. Of course, fallouts from that US Africa summit. We had our President Nana Addo Dankwa-Akufo-Addo, raise concerns about how Russian mercenaries, quote and unquote, are working closer towards our borders. It may be happening in neighboring Burkina Faso, but the presence of the Wagner group there is increasingly becoming of some regional concern for us.
But is it because of the European Union? Or
well,
what is your question?
That's established, and that's why I'm asking that what help are you extending so we don't become too fixated on what's happening to Ukraine? What help are you offering to Ghana in terms of our border security, tightening the measures and ensuring that we're not solving the problem of Ukraine and creating one just nearby?
No, precisely. I think it's a fair question, but I think the answer is very clear. The European Union support to Ghana and other neighboring countries to prevent the consequences of the spillover of terrorist activities are very clear. We are supporting. We will.
Okay.
We are currently supporting the Ghanaian border system. We have an active cooperation with the services in charge of immigration currently. So this is what we call the SBS project. But we have another project directly linked to this prevention dimension, which is called NOPREVSEC. We are active together with a different set of actors at local level, traditional authorities, NCCE and regional authorities to prevent and to ensure local mediation, to prevent potential radicalization. We are as well active, we are currently active in supporting counter-terrorism assets of the country. We are training the military and the police, and we are handing over equipment like drones, so on and so forth. No later than 2 weeks ago, I've handed over a large set of equipment for maritime security, because don't forget, maritime security as well is a key issue of concern in the Gulf of Guinea. We've done that at Osu Castle, which is the host of the Regional Maritime Cell Coordination, which is fully integrated in what we call the Yaoundé architecture. So this is not an EU priority. This is a priority shared by Ghana and neighboring countries. There is, a complex system of maritime security from Cape Verde to Angola, and Ghana is in the middle of this and is hosting one of the coordination centers, and we are supporting that as well. So we are not sitting on our hands, and we are working as well in order to enhance and increase our support in those areas, because the challenges are high. The commitment by the countries in the region have been demonstrated during the Accra Initiative summit, which has been organized in 22nd of November. We have supported it technically and financially, but it is first and foremost a priority of Ghana and neighboring countries. So we are fully committed to expand and to increase our support in order to prevent potential spillover in Ghana and neighboring countries.
And I recall this happening late last year, the Accra Initiative. Opinions are divided on this as to what the priority should be, especially from the position of the West. What do you think your input should be when it comes to the Accra Initiative, knowing that these African countries coming together on their own to fight extremism are having a shortfall in terms of the military capabilities? Do you support those who are of that school of thought that let's ramp up military aid to the West Africa sub-region?
First and foremost, the reading and the priority setting has to be done by the countries themselves. I'm not here to tell anyone to say, these are the priorities, okay? the beauty of the summit was to create a space where the head of states and before them the best experts in Africa, West Africa, not necessarily Ghanaian, from elsewhere in West Africa, were sharing their experiences. And they came to the conclusion that there is a common challenge they need to address jointly. So, conclusion number one. Conclusion number two is this is an issue which requires a large array of engagement, military, but as well socio-economic development, as well specific prevention measures to avoid marginalized community or communities who feel marginalized, because beyond fact, perceptions are very important, so on and so forth. So the response is not limited to one set of area. First element. And second element, once again, we are in the hands of the countries, in the hands of the Ghanaian authorities to identify where they believe the priorities are. But I just wanted to remind the conclusions of the people who know the terrain, and basically these are the conclusions of the heads of state as well. Military action is needed, but besides, there are other actions which are equally crucial in order to make those endeavors a success.
What may be bringing up the calls for military aid will definitely be because of the developments in the Sahel. It's fast deteriorating. Burkina Faso is a clear example of why we need a buffer for Ghana at our borders to check extremism. Even in the last few days, aspects have pointed to the infiltration of some extremist groups into parts of our northern borders. All of these situations are becoming a cause of worry for many here in Ghana, and that's why I was asking the question about why we're not seeing military aid moving to Ghana.
No, there is equipment, as I said, moving to Ghana. We can do more if this is what is expected, but you cannot just load and ship any equipment. Equipments are linked to a specific objective, and objectives are to be embedded in a specific strategy. And this strategy has to be shared by the members of the, could be a coalition, could be a joint multinational task force, not for me to decide, but this is, I would say, one aspect. What I was saying, and I think it's important that you factor that in when you describe the situation of neighboring countries. Deterioration of the situation is not necessarily linked to the weakness of military response. So, if it's not that case, you should not focus only on this aspect. These aspects matter, but they should not be exclusive to other aspects. Once again, socio-economic dimension, dynamics, exclusion were key in the deterioration of the situation in different countries in the Sahel. And these are elements that we can, I would say, get the lessons from in order to avoid the same dynamics.
And this growth of extremism has come also with a certain trend of receding democracy across the West Africa sub-region. We understand that the EU is likely to hold a political dialogue. Are you able to share the details with us? And would some of these issues feature when you converge to discuss the political climate here?
No, there again, there is an assumption which needs to be discussed.
Right.
I don't think it's that clear that this situation comes with receding democracy. Leaders of Mali and Burkina Faso were democratically elected before being toppled.
Right.
I think we should not forget that. And part of our dialogue and partnership with Ghana, what we have mentioned so far is the political partnership. It's very rich. It's a political partnership which goes at global level, because Ghana, as you know, is sitting in the UN Security Council. At regional level, because till last year Ghana was chairing the ECOWAS Conference of head of state, at continental level, so on and so forth. And we have, as you mentioned, our issues of bilateral interest, and these issues will be dealt with in our regular, what we call political dialogue, and the next one will take place in a few days.
But then, beyond the dialogue itself, sources tell us that we're expecting a team to arrive here in Ghana as part of, I don't know if it's a pre or post election or democracy observation team. What's the EU planning just to partner and support Ghana in its course of consolidating our democratic gains?
We have this instrument of deploying EU observers for some elections. We don't do that when the conditions are not met.
Right.
We do that when the conditions are met and when there are high democratic standards or values to exchange. It's not a one-way street. These elections observation mission are very important for us as well, to draw lessons and to learn from other partners. And after midway, let's say, during the mandate, there is a so-called follow-up mission, which comes to assess the implementation of some of the recommendations that have been elaborated during the mission. So basically, it's what is foreseen in a few weeks' time.
So when are we expecting them to arrive, and
in the week of
what
the
engagements
20th.
And what engagements will take place?
In the week of the 20th of March, you can expect this mission to have an engagement with all the institutions involved in the organization, in the preparation of elections. So it comes from bodies coming from the constitutions to political parties, to experts, so on and so forth. So this is quite, I would say, regular, not of the ordinary. There is a process.
And Mr. Ambassador, let's talk about the economy. Well, it's not just the Ghanaian economy, but the world over, the global economy appears to be suffering some major setbacks. But Ghana's situation is unique because as we speak, the country is asking the Paris Club for a debt cancellation. They are also making some appeals to the West for support in terms of the International Monetary Fund austerity program. How is the EU positioning itself to support, particularly when it comes to the aspect of debt cancellation, just to free up fiscal space for Ghana so we're able to roll out some more developmental projects?
The answer is very clear. We are supportive of every effort to help Ghana weather the current situation, but the answer is straightforward. As the EU, we are not sitting in the Paris Club. We are not sitting at the board of the governors of IMF, so you should direct that question to the member states who are sitting there. But as I said, the partnership with Ghana is political, but it's as well in terms of economic development. And one of the key shared priority we have with the Ghanaian government is support for growth and support for job creation. And we will do what we have committed to do. And there again, it's very important to mention, because you seem to say that some of the opinion believe that Ukraine is dragging all the energy. Ghana has not lost one cedi of what we have committed to spend in Ghana to support economic growth, job creation, smart city, and security. Not one cedi has been lost.
You're still sustaining the aid and whatever partnership
what we have committed in 2021, so before the invasion, has been maintained, safeguarded, and we are even expanding, because we have adopted a specific measure for food security last year, 10 million euros, which comes on top of what we have already committed for Ghana. So I think it's very important to have that very clear.
The first exogenous factors that our leadership, they still continue to point at it as part of the reasons why our economy is not performing that much is the COVID-19 pandemic. Experts have recommended the use of vaccines as a way of ensuring immunity and to protecting the population. Ghana has just passed its law, its framework backing the production of vaccines. I recall that somewhere last year the EU was part of that joint statement, pledging some commitment to support our process in terms of the vaccine development. Now that the law is passed, does it provide that opportune moment for you to come in, and when are we to expect that support to come?
Very much so. And I think this is one of the elements where the cooperation between Ghana and European Union stands out. Ghana has been selected amongst a very few number of African nations to benefit from our support to host and to create vaccine facilities. And this is ongoing as we speak. Okay. As we speak, the European Union is supporting Food and Drug Authority, because everything comes from there, in terms of regulation setting, in terms of target setting, in terms of what they call maturity. It means that the maturity of the ecosystem to create vaccines on a specific caliber. This is ongoing. So last year we said we will do it. Now we are doing it. So we'll have some discussion with FDA in the incoming days. Right. And beside that, we are working to identify specific areas where we can directly support the private sector to do it. Because where Ghana has chosen a specific path, compared to Senegal, for example, who has got a facility since more than 100 years, Ghana wants it to be private sector based, which has its merit as well. So we need as well to create the space, especially in the current economic context, to make this sustainable. So we are conducting the talks and that. So this is very much happening.
Okay, we'll be wrapping up shortly, but on a lighter note, I see that there was a lot of celebrations when, of course, you outdoored a program, sort of a cultural exchange just to expose Ghanaians to the European culture as well. And we understand that the EU is planning to also leverage on our creative arts industry. Tell us about that program and what it is that the EU is seeking to do.
This is not a lighter subject. This is a very important subject.
We all have fun when that subject comes up, I guess.
Yes, yes. But culture is a deep manifestation of who we are and who we want to be. So we take it very seriously to support the Ghanaian cultural industry to thrive, because culture is about identity, but culture is about business as well. And as I said, one of our key activity here to support job creation. So this is one of the reasons why we are currently, as we speak as well, we are currently supporting the Ministry of Culture and Tourism to revamp its culture strategy, firstly. And secondly, of course, culture is about the outing. We are supporting a number of initiatives. Secondly, another issue of interest to us is to highlight the transboundary commonalities, because there is nothing which looks like the mosque of Larabanga than another mosque in the northern part of Togo or Benin or Côte d'Ivoire. And then you can see that the whole region has got its own commonalities. The whole region, you know, last time I learned about Adinkras. It was in Abidjan. It was in Abidjan. Because
not here in Ghana.
I'm not saying it's not from Ghana, but there was a richness of what we call museography to explain what it is, what it's come from. So this is a shared heritage. This is a shared heritage that everyone should benefit from, and which merits to be, you know, put forward. But we are supporting literature. We are supporting this year Accra being nominated by UNESCO the World Book Capital. We are supporting reading. Last year with His Majesty Osumanche.
Right.
We have given away books for tens of schools in Accra on sustainability issue. We are doing a lot on culture, because not only this is a way to enrich our exchanges, but this is a way as well to raise awareness on specific issues and to create economic opportunity. We will give, we will hand over, if they are interested, to the National Museum a product which is a virtual visit, virtual tour of the National Museum. You can go on internet and you can visit all the major museums in the world for free. Right. Sometimes it makes you want to visit by yourself. Sometimes you're done with it, okay. But what we want to do is to give this tool, which is, you know, a top digital tool to the museum and to the ministry, if so they wish, in order to create the, you know, the call for tourists to visit the museum and of course the rest of Ghana.
And the future promises to be very exciting. I'm jealous. You need to be part of our Ghana month as well. So we'll talk about that behind the scenes. But Ambassador, we're wrapping up the conversation. EU has enjoyed a very good relations with the Republic of Ghana. As we wrap up, what do you see the future to be, and what message do you have for the people of Ghana?
The future is what we are building now, and what we are building now is a more thriving country in terms of economic situation, but a country which creates more job, to be more inclusive, to take care of all of its population, and this is what we want to support the government to achieve. The future is as well the ability of this country to be a hub of stability, of democracy in the region. This is a key asset. This is a key asset that we want to help the authorities to safeguard as well, because this can determine the future of the country if it's not safeguarded.
Ambassador Ishad Razali, thank you for talking.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure speaking to you.